We welcome now someone with direct experience in this process. Mark Chenoweth worked on nominations like Judge Coney Barrett's in the Department of Justice Office of Legal Policy. He also served as Mike Pompeo's chief of staff when Secretary Pompeo was in the House of Representatives, and he is now executive director of the New Civil Liberties Alliance, a pro bono law firm committed to challenging the administrative state. So, Mark, thank you so much for being with us. Give us your insights into the process behind the scenes right now in a nomination like this. We heard a little bit of exchange there. We've watched it all day long, where the Democrats are going to say, you really don't like the Affordable Care Act, and Judge Barrett saying, I'm not saying that.
Right. Well, what goes on behind the scenes is primarily research, right? So both the Republican senator staffs and the Democrat senator staffs, as well as folks at the Department of Justice, and when there's a Supreme Court pick like this, folks at the White House might get involved as well in just researching and trying to figure out if there's anything in the past decisions that the judge has made, past speeches the judge has given, past academic writings that Judge Barrett has had that might give some indication of where she is in these issues, or someplace where it seems like she may have pre-committed to something, so that even if it wouldn't be possible to derail her nomination, it might be possible to suggest that she should have to recuse herself if some similar matter were to come up in the future.
So, Mark, I think everyone would agree this is a very important decision for the president. His nomination and the Senate confirmation. Who sits on the Supreme Court is a very important thing, no question about it. At the same time, as I've been watching this with the Affordable Care Act, it strikes me that it's a form of political theater. There's nothing wrong with political theater here, but that's what it is, with senators trying to get her to say things that might be politically helpful. At the same time, she's answering as a lawyer would. I mean, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, she's written taking issue, questioning what Chief Justice Roberts had to say, but it wasn't on the merits of the Affordable Care Act. It's on a very specific issue of law and how you interpret a piece of legislation.
That's right. She took issue with his characterization of the individual mandate to purchase insurance as a tax, and that was the finding that Chief Justice Roberts made that allowed him to uphold the act as constitutional, even though a different part of that same decision struck down part of what Congress had done as a violative of the Commerce Clause. So she was taking issue with that tax piece, but the issue that's actually before the court about a week after the election is whether or not that individual mandate I was just talking about, which has since been stripped legislatively from the act, so that individual mandate no longer exists. The question is whether that can be severed from the rest of the statute, or whether, because that's been cut out, the rest of the statute has to come down with it. That's the particular issue. So this severability issue is, as you suggest, is a very nuanced legal question and not a policy question at all.
Give us a sense, because it may be relevant not just to the Affordable Care Act, but more generally with respect to legislation and independent agencies and the administrative apparatus in Washington. Is there a conservative, and I say that with a small c, not a capital C, but a small c, interpretation of something like the Affordable Care Act as to whether, in fact, you would allow severability or not?
Well, I don't know about whether to allow severability or not, but I certainly think there's a small c conservative view which is that if Congress has passed something and the text of the statute really says that, then there's a presumption of constitutionality that attaches to what Congress has done, and there's a desire to have those sorts of policy questions made by the elected Congress and not by the unelected federal bureaucracy.
Well, that's a terribly important point. At the same time, I've read some of Judge Amy Coney Barrett's writings that suggest there's an issue of democracy and there's an issue of republicanism, and a distinction between those two. That it's not just majority rule, but also you should read perhaps legislation. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but legislation a little more narrowly because it impinges its individual liberties.
Well, I think that the function of the federal courts in our constitutional system is precisely to protect minority rights from overreaching majority power, and that's why we have all the rights instantiated in the Bill of Rights, so that if an individual is standing in the way of a majority, but the individual has that constitutional right on their side, then the court should be siding with that individual against the majority. So the quintessential example would be a criminal defendant who the mob thinks is guilty and needs to be put away, but whose been able to show that there was a reasonable doubt in a court of law, and that person then doesn't go to jail but is released. I mean, that's the kind of thing that the courts are there to ensure.
It's a fool's errand to really project how someone with life tenure will change the Supreme Court of the United States, because it's always been different from what people anticipated. But nonetheless, do it just for a moment. What do you think Judge Amy Coney Barrett's position on the Supreme Court how would it affect the court, the institution overall? Because at this point, it looks very likely she'll be confirmed.
I agree. It does look likely that she'll be confirmed. Well, I think she's replacing a justice who, in Justice Ginsburg, who did not adhere as closely to the text of statutes, and I think Justice Barrett will do that more, and I think that Justice Barrett will more closely adhere to the original meaning of the Constitution, as she said earlier today in her remarks, and I think that combination will return more self-government to American voters, and if Justice Barrett proves to be as consistent as Justice Gorsuch and Justice Kavanaugh on these sorts of structural constitutional questions, we may see the power of Congress grow relative, again, to the unelected federal bureaucracy.
Fascinating. Thank you so much, Mark. Really appreciate you being with us. It's Mark Chenoweth of the New Civil Liberties Alliance.